when the Minnesota Board of Medical Practice came after my license, not once, not twice, but 3 times, when I made the decision that I'm going public with it, I am not going to slink off into the darkness. I am going to say this is wrong. We have got to stop the cancel culture because it will be the death of freedom.
3 times drug before a medical board. 3 times. I can't tell you how many doctors I know who gave up after their first. We need this guy to be the governor. I am so tired of cowards everywhere I look. You talk about arrows. This guy put his career on the line because he thought it would save lives. He thought it was the right thing to do.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Scott Jensen podcast. I'm Andy Schmidt, here with Dr. Scott Jensen. We're back. Today we got a special guest. I'm not going to introduce him. Scott, that's your job. Who do we got?
Well, thank you, Andy. Today we have, if you will, sort of an acquaintance or a friend that's developed just because of COVID. Mm-hmm. Tom Renz is an absolute courageous champion who has been doing legal work trying to help folks who have come up against the unfairness that's been associated with COVID-19. And Tom first reached out to me asking if I would be willing to provide some input, guidance, an affidavit for a suit that he was working on. And he can tell it better than I can. But what I've come to learn about Tom is that, and I think I'm going to ask Tom to start there, but he's made a big decision over the last 12 months about what he sees the noble cause of his life evolving to be. So with that, Tom, if I could just turn it over to you, and if you could tell us what you've been doing regarding COVID and some of its victims, but maybe you could start out with what your noble cause is going to be.
Well, I'm happy to do that. So it's real simple. God, family, country, right? I made the decision when we got going on this to kind of give up everything. I'm all in. I'm all in on the freedom. I don't do any other work. What's my focus? It's freedom, it's God, it's family, it's country. If it's not related to that, I'm just not doing it. And I don't apologize. I don't care if people believe like I do. They don't need to. But I also don't need to apologize for what I believe. And what I believe is, I'm a Christian man. I'm a Catholic. Don't judge me on my Pope. But, it's a God, family, country thing. And that's what I want to do. That's it. That's what I want to fight for. And I've been kind of saddened to see how desperate the need for that fight is. But what an honor to be able to do it. And that's all I'm doing right now. It's fighting that good fight.
That's awesome. It's great to hear that too, that we got people out here, especially I'm young, I'm 21. Sometimes it feels like nobody's fighting for us. And so it's great to hear there's people like you out there fighting. I want to just ask you to kind of give a summary or a brief breakdown for the people out there who might not know who you are. What exactly are you fighting for? If you had to pinpoint it, put it into, this is what I'm fighting for. What are you fighting? What are you fighting for?
Well, so it's let me start out with who I am. Nobody, really. I'm a solo practitioner. I'm some little guy from a little town, not particularly special, but I'm just a fighter, right? I'm a fighter. And so what am I fighting for, right? You're fighting for freedom. It started out, they lock us in our houses. They tell us that we have to be locked in our houses to keep us safe from this horrible disease, except for this horrible disease wasn't as bad as tons of other diseases that we don't do anything about. And Dr. Jensen, of all people, understands. The man was a hero. He stood up and spoke out and said, wait a second, I'm a doctor. This isn't what they're saying. Well, I heard what he said, and I did my homework, and I agreed with him. And so, well, Dr. Jensen was fighting this from that end. I was fighting it from the legal end. I'm saying, listen, you can't take my freedoms because there's a germ out there. If I'm afraid of the germ and want to lock myself in a room, I can. But guess what? You can't make me. You can't make me lock down. You can't make me wear a mask. You can't make me shut my business down. And so I started out fighting for that. And now it's morphed into really a fight for our lives with some of the stuff going on with the experiments that they're doing on people related to the vaccination.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I love that you're fighting. I like that you said that when Scott was fighting from, the doctor's standpoint, you were fighting from the lawyer standpoint, and it's good to hear that, to know that there's people fighting all over. There's people fighting for this all over the place. You got something to say?
When I think, Tom, if you could share a little bit how you've gotten literally pulled in so many directions because people are tapping into your resources. You can be just a guy and you can be modest about it. That's wonderful. But the fact of the matter is you've developed a tremendous amount of expertise. And with that expertise, people from different states are reaching out to Tom Renz, and specifically one of your more visible clients would undoubtedly be America's Frontline Doctors. You've gone to the mat for them, trying to help them be able to disseminate the message that is in so many ways about putting patients first, in terms of, do we get to treat patients according to the best of our abilities? Do we get to choose and work that out with our patients? Doctors are being, if you will, pinned down and squashed. And Tom Renz says, oh, no, you don't. You're not going to do that. And so, Tom, could you comment a little bit about how you got involved with America's Frontline Doctors and what you've been doing with them? Because, frankly, your willingness to champion their cause has given them the energy to redouble their efforts.
Sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, so Frontline Doctors is awesome. Simone's been fighting for freedom and for this cause. And she saw what I was doing, and I started out and we had Ohio Stands Up, which I still work with them. And then I joined and I'm working with Make Americans Free Again. And I still work with them. And, they saw my work and they saw that I'm fighting this wherever it needs fought. And, Simone reached out, said, hey, you want to join the team? You want to help us? And so I'm doing that now too. What a privilege, right? I mean, there's this whole thing about how doctors feel about lawyers. I try to be the one lawyer that doctors don't hate, at least doctors who care about their patients, right? That's it, right? So we look at this most sacred relationship, right? The doctor-patient relationship. The number one thing, you can trust your doctor. You can tell him anything. You got to trust your doctor. But that's been destroyed in many ways. We have the federal government telling the doctor what he can do. We have the insurance companies telling the doctor what he can do. We have the big hospital corporations telling the doctor what he can do. We have the drug companies trying to influence the doctor. And somewhere way down underneath all this garbage is your relationship with the patient. And, I can't say that I've talked to too many doctors that said, I wanted to go to med school so that I could really push every drug possible and hopefully become a rich monster, supporting drug companies. Everybody that I went to med school, I wanted to save people. First do no harm. I'm here to save lives. That's what people go to med school for. But that's not what medicine is now. And that's what I'm fighting for. And guys, if we don't have that, if you were at a point now in this nation where health and our lives are political toys and tools that are bought and paid for with money from pharmaceutical companies, we're in serious trouble.
Tom, I got a question for you. You kind of just talked about a lot right there, and I just want to ask you to maybe be more specific. Looking back on this past year with 2020 and what has happened with COVID, what do you think should be the biggest takeaway for Americans, your average Americans, not doctors, not lawyers? I'm not a doctor or a lawyer. I'm not smart enough to be a doctor or a lawyer, I don't think. But for your average American, what can be my biggest takeaway in this last year from COVID? What should I be focusing on going forward?
Not taking your freedom for granted. We have sat on our butts. The World War II generation came back from fighting one of the most evil monsters that's ever lived. And they made our country into the leader of the universe, the greatest generation. My grandparents, they did some amazing things. Since then, our life has been so good that we've taken it for granted. We've watched as our freedoms have eroded over the years. We watched as we gave away this and we gave away that because this group was complaining or that group was complaining, and it was just too uncomfortable to fight back. And, we always say, well, the slippery slope thing, that's not real. Well, guess what? A little over a year ago, they decided they were going to lock you in your house and that you couldn't leave. They decided they were going to tell you whether your business is essential or not. They decided they were going to put a mask over your face and your children's face. And now they're trying to force you to stick a needle into your child's arm. Not because you choose to, not even because the science supports it, but really because they say so. If we don't take away, and everybody waited. I remember a lot of the people who are conservative were waiting, for Trump to do something amazing. A lot of the Trump people, he's going to parachute onto the lawn of the White House and he's going to fix everything. It is our responsibility. If we want to be free, we have to stand. We have to fight for it. We have to be willing to be uncomfortable and look someone in the eye and say, I don't care what your cause is. It doesn't trump our freedom. And we've got to do it in a respectful way. So that's the takeaway, freedom.
When I think, Tom, when you and I first got connected, I had been involved with a Colorado lawsuit whereby a small group of citizens were saying, you don't get to shut down our churches. And so I had put together an affidavit supporting that. And then Tom and I got connected, and I said, well, Tom, would it be helpful if I got you the information I provided Colorado and also connected you? And that happened. A little bit before that, Simone Gold, who Tom had referenced, and I had connected, and I think she had been dismissed from her job because she'd been speaking a contrarian narrative.
Sure.
So you had all this, if you will, turmoil and roiling waters going on.
Mm-hmm.
And thankfully, Tom, from all this cesspool of media bias, you emerged as a clear-speaking voice that said, I'll help you.
Yeah.
I will help elevate the patient-doctor relationship, and I will fight for your freedom. And so I think, Tom, you have had a tremendous number of clients, if you will, lean on you and say, hey, we need you to guide us. How can we be effective?
Well, I kind of have a question for both of you, and either one of you can jump in on this and kind of bounce off each other, but I think that this is important because, Tom, you had just talked about how, they locked us in our houses. They told us what we could do in regards to business, church, school. Can we go or can we not go? And I think we can say, yeah, the government did that, but a group that played a role in that is also the media, and how the media portrayed things and how the media pushed things in certain ways. And my question is, how, as Americans, how can we start to question the integrity of the media, and what questions can we start asking? And that's for Scott and for Tom, because what questions should we start asking to the media and saying, wait a second, this last year was a mess. I don't ever want to see that again. How do I fix that?
I'm going to let Tom go ahead and take a crack at that. I've got some thoughts, but I think Tom has really done a wonderful job of crystallizing what's happened over the last year. And so I think that, Tom, if you'd be willing, I'd love to see you connect the dots and bring in, what do we do in regards to the media when the media is so dominating and they seem to be so, if you will, interconnected with the social media platforms. So we've got that double whammy of typical legacy media and the alphabet soup that you get with social media.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and man, you talk about a critical issue, but for the censorship, there is no COVID crisis, right? None of this is happening if the truth is out there, but there's something called the Trusted News Initiative. And what that was all of the major media players, including the social media players. They all got together, and that includes Google, even your search engines. They got together and they said, we're going to hide any information that doesn't fit the narrative. It's not approved by these bureaucrats who are all on the take, right? And they've done it incredibly effectively. I mean, they buried everything that we're doing. But for the heroic efforts of guys like you and podcasts like this and information like this, our word's not getting out very well. I mean, they've hidden me. They censored me when I was testifying before state legislatures multiple times. Licensed attorney testifying before state legislatures. They censored me. It's unbelievable. But these people, they colluded. And why? Well, guess why? The people who own the social media, who own the big tech, also own the media companies, and they own big pharma. It's the same group of these scumbag billionaires that own everything, and they're using one business to promote the other. They're using very unfair trade practices, and we do intend to call them on that. We do intend to bring them to the mat on that. We will shut this censorship down one way or another. You have my word that we are going after that.
And if I could piggyback on top of that, Tom, you're absolutely right. And I think one of the things that I found myself on a certain path that I hadn't anticipated is when the Minnesota Board of Medical Practice came after my license, not once, not twice, but 3 times. When I made the decision that I'm going public with it, I am not going to slink off into the darkness. I am going to say this is wrong. I think that was one small piece that I could, if you will, contribute to the energy. But there were so many more. Calling out the death certificate completion, the whole process was being corrupted. But even look at the pushing that needed to take place. Look at the Tucker Carlsons and the Laura Ingrams and the fact that they kept pushing. Look at the emails that we see from Fauci. Do you remember a little bit more than a year ago, Senator Tom Cotton was ridiculed because he dared to say that it mattered where the virus came from. Now we've got the President of the United States saying, we need to redouble our efforts. We need to know, where did this virus come from? Because if this is an engineered virus in a lab, then what the devil went on when we had official WHO investigations taking place over there? Can we trust the work they do?
Sure.
We literally are at a place right now where the only way that true freedom can be preserved is if we insist and demand that the contrarian narrative be elevated, be listened to. We have got to stop the cancel culture because it will be the death of freedom. And Tom, thank goodness for you that you're willing to fight that fight.
Well, and if I can interject, thank goodness for you too. I mean, let me tell you what. 3 times drug before a medical board. 3 times. I can't tell you how many doctors I know who gave up after their first or gave up before their first. 3 times. And I'm going to do a shameless plug because I can. A shameless plug that no one asked me to do, by the way. We need this guy to be the governor. We need this guy to be the governor. Let me tell you how many politicians I talk to, people who you would know, people who you'd think are on our side, but when the rubber meets the road, they won't back up. They won't back up what they're saying. They won't do it. We need Scott Jensen as a governor. We need people in the elected arena who have the courage to do something. We have the courage to stand for something. I am so tired of cowards everywhere I look. You talk about arrows. This guy put his career on the line because he thought it would save lives. He thought it was the right thing to do. I have taken so many arrows. I know what Scott's been through. My God, we need people with courage in our offices. And I'm so honored to know you, Dr. Jensen. I'm so honored to call you a friend. Yeah, I do call you a friend. And man, let me be the first to support you in everything you're doing.
Well, Tom, thank you. There is that old adage, wherever you are, be there. It isn't necessarily the case that we always pick the path that we're on. Sometimes we find ourselves on a path that we might not have anticipated, and we simply have to step up. And I guess we have to remember that courage isn't being brave without fear. Courage is being brave when you're scared silly.
Well, yeah, and it's encouraging for me to hear that from you guys. talking, just it's encouraging for me as a younger person to see that you guys are willing to do this. Something that I can look up to, both of you guys I can look up to, and people in my generation can look up to. And Tom, you've talked about the vaccine, and everybody's talking about the vaccine. Why is it so dangerous, or for our freedom to kind of, I don't want to say force children to get the vaccine, to push the vaccine on children? Why do you think it's so dangerous for our freedom? I mean, for some people would say they're just trying to help. We just don't want people to die. So what are you going to say to that?
Yeah. So first of all, that's garbage. How do you know? My first question is in regards to the safety. How do you know? I mean, there have been no long-term studies because these haven't been developed long-term. You can't do a long-term study on something that hasn't been invented that long, right? So we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We do know that this is thousands of times more dangerous than just about any other vaccine in the market. And pick them, any of them. We look at the various reports compared to anything else out there. So, I mean, just in terms of physical danger, it's critical. I mean, this is why would you do this? Let me tell you what's in one of my lawsuits. So this is in federal court, and if I lie to the court, I get in trouble. There is a 0% statistical risk of death for children from COVID. 0. Okay? Doesn't mean none have died. It means there's a 0% statistical risk. Okay? That's according to CDC statistics. Why, in God's name, would you use an experimental drug on your child to treat them for something that's at no risk? Why? It makes no sense. So there's that. But let me talk to you about the other side of this, right? My kids, I mentioned, I'm a man, I'm a man of faith. I'm a lousy Christian, but I try to be one, right? I do what I can. So my kids, we raise them according to our faith, right? I can't tell you anything more important to me. I will tell you I would pick up arms and fight to defend my right to raise my children that way in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. So you're going to tell me now that you get to decide. We're moving away from me being able to take care of my kids and to the idea that, the government can just start programming my kids wherever I want. I don't consent to my child being vaccinated with an experimental vaccine. And guess what? It ain't going to happen. I don't consent to my child being exposed to critical race theory. It ain't going to happen. I'll pull my kid from school first. I don't care what it is. My right as a parent is so fundamental to our Constitution, to our nation, to our freedom. My right to teach my children to be good is so fundamental. I will stand for that right. I will fight for that right. I will do what I've got to do. You will not take that right away from me. My children are a gift from God, and I will assure you, if there is anything on this planet I will defend, it's my children. And that's what's important.
Yeah, and on top of that, Tom, I think that it is really important to be aware of the fact that in 1961, when President Eisenhower was giving his farewell address to the nation, he said in so many words what you're saying, that there might come a day where public policy would be held captive to this scientific, technological elite. And we're literally seeing that come true before our very eyes. So thank you, Tom, for that.
I want to ask one more quick question, answer as quickly as possible, but I think a lot of Americans and people in Minnesota are feeling the exact same way you are. Very frustrated with how things are going with their kids, what they're being taught, the vaccine, all of this stuff. My question is, as Americans and Minnesotans, how can we be more involved in health freedom in the United States and in Minnesota? So maybe you guys should split this or whatever, but how do you think we can be more involved just as your average guy and average woman who wants to help in this cause?
I mean, I'm an average guy. I got a wife, I got 2 kids, I live in a normal house, I drive a pickup truck. I'm about as average as you can get. I just decided to fight. You got to do the same thing. Maybe you're not a lawyer, maybe you can't fight in court. Maybe you're shy, maybe you don't like public speaking. Doesn't matter. Everybody's got a gift. Find your gift, use your gift. Start local. You may not be able to get a return call from a senator, but you can probably talk to your town council people. And guess what? If your county says we're not going to allow any business that does business in our county to enforce a vaccine mandate or vaccine passports, let them stand up for you. That's what you elected them for. And on a national level, that's how we need people to fight from the bottom up. And that's how you fight from the bottom up. Okay. I need that. You can't just trust some schlub like me in a courtroom. Right. But I'm out there, I'm going to fight from the top down as well, right? We're suing DHHS, we're suing Fauci, we're suing states, we're suing everybody. That's what I do. I just sue everybody. I'm going to sue them into submission. So that's what we're fighting that, and we're trying to fight from the top down. But call them, leave messages, send emails, write letters, get a hold of your elected officials. Join Make Americans Free Again. Join America's Frontline Doctors. Join your different stand-up groups. Fight for freedom. Stand up, speak out. For God's sakes, quit being afraid of offending people. You don't have a right to live your life without being offended. And, P.S., you don't even have a right to happiness. What you got to do is, if you want a right to happiness, you first got to have a right to freedom, because you can't chase happiness without being free to do so. So let me suggest you get up, get off your butt, fight for freedom, tell people enough is enough. Get out there, support people like Scott Jensen, support people in Nevada like Joey Gilbert, support people who are running for the right office. Get these scumbags who stand for nothing out of office, primary them, get them out. I don't care if it's your township trustee or your U.S. senator. We got to fight to get the right people in office. We've got to retake our nation from bottom up and top down. And, we just got to get involved. If you're doing something, you're a part of the solution.
I don't think I've got anything to add to that. I think what Tom is saying is you got to be engaged and you got to fight. But what's the question that you always close with, Andy?
I was going to just explain. Tom, we do something at the end of every single podcast. It's called What's Good, Scott? Because listening to this stuff can get people, a little bit depressed, a little bit down, and politics can be annoying. So we say, what's good, Scott? And he tells us something that's good that happened in his week. So, Scott, what's good?
Well, Andy, I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the 2 minutes that I normally would use to answer this question. I'm going to turn it over to you, Tom. Tom, why don't you tell us in your life over the last week what's good that would lift spirits? Thanks.
Well, I had the single most humbling and amazing experience of my life, short of the birth of my children and my marriage, last week. I had the privilege of speaking at Clay Clark's event in Tampa. Dr. Jensen was there. A whole bunch of people way better than me were speaking, right? So I'm up on stage. There's 11,000 people. 11,000 people. That's 3 times or 4 times more people than lived in the town I grew up in. Okay? 11,000 people. I'm giving my speech. Do you know what an honor it is to talk to 11,000 people? And it's even bigger honor to see them stand up and applaud. They stood up, they clapped for me. I mean, that's crazy, right? That's crazy. What an honor that these people care what I'm saying. Then let me tell you what happened. So Clay, I had no idea this was going to happen. No idea. I've never been more humbled. Clay comes up and he interrupts during my speech. And he says a few words about what I'm doing and my fight and how I've been fighting. And that's incredible to me, right? Because I haven't slept in a year and a half. All I do is fight 24/7. My family sacrificed, my kids have sacrificed, I sacrificed. But it's an honor because that's what God wants us to do, right? So then Clay says, what can you do to help this guy? And I've never even been in a crowd where I've seen this, let alone been on stage to be the receiving end. Probably 2/3 of the people got up and rushed the stage. They prayed for me. They gave money to us. They gave us our support, the words of kindness. I've never experienced anything like this in my life, and I got to be honest, it gives me chills to think about. I just... Because you wonder, you're fighting and you're praying to God that you're making a difference to someone. And then what you do is helping people, at least giving them hope. Because I don't know whether I win or lose, but I know I'm going to keep fighting. Thousands of people came up and said thank you. Guys, there's a reward if you're a good servant to God. Sometimes it's not till you're gone from this place. Sometimes it's here. But let me tell you what an honor, what a privilege. And just fight. Have courage. That was my reward. I don't care if I get another thing for the rest of my life. That was more than enough. What an honor. So that's my good.
That's awesome. That's really cool to hear. And I just want to say thank you for coming on and doing this with us. You didn't have to, but you did. And so I just really appreciate you coming on and spending some time with us to talk to people about some of these big issues. Scott, do you have anything you want to say to just kind of close us out? Or
Tom, from the bottom of my heart, I just want to say thank you. You've been a trailblazer. You've taken a page from President Trump's playbook, and you've put it all on the line. Thanks for sharing today, Tom.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Yeah, so that's it for today. I think that's a lot. I mean, that's going to take people a couple weeks to digest. It'll probably take me a while. Just make sure if you like this podcast that you like, you subscribe, you follow, you give us a 5-star, you give us a review, you send in emails, you go to drscottjensen.com. Tom, anywhere that they can go, any quick website or something they can go to see more of you.
Renz-law.com. You can look up America's Frontline Doctors. You can look up Make Americans Free Again, and you can look up Ohio Stands Up, and I'm probably in a bunch of other places, but I don't know.
Put those in the description. Thank you for coming on, and thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.